Well, it has been a busy offseason for the Indiana Fever, signing some big-name free agents to the roster.
The Indiana Fever were the darlings of free agency. They've scooped up all-star veterans with multiple championships and the toughness to make a deep playoff run. The Fever front office has given Caitlin Clark the supporting cast she's never had. So why has their latest move left fans straight up confused and feeling betrayed? The Fever recently signed Brianna Turner, a defensive-minded forward known for her ability to block shots, rebound, and be a high-energy presence in the paint. At first glance, this signing seems like yet another win for the Fever. But many Fever fans were quick to push back, arguing that Turner's tweets were political, activist in nature, and critical of Clark's fan base.
I mean, that will be a bad idea. People will reject the team, I'm just telling you.
There was a lot of talk about quote-unquote protecting the locker room, but a lot of fans feel like that has been thrown out the window with this signing. So is that the case? Did the Fever just make a huge mistake signing Turner, a player many believe brings way more baggage than value? Let's break it down, because Fever fans are not happy about this. But first, like this video if you think this signing was a mistake, and comment if you think the outrage is overblown. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on this. So yeah, the reason fans are so upset is not just because of the signing, it's because of how well the Fever did in free agency this year. After years of being mid or worse, they've finally built a roster that can compete at the highest level. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston may be the long-term cornerstones of the Fever's success, but the Fever brass knew after Caitlin Clark's record-breaking rookie season, the time to win is now. They needed veterans, defensive toughness, and playoff experience to surround their young stars. And that's exactly what they went out and got. First, you have wnba, a 6-time All-Star, 2-time champion. She's one of the more versatile and consistent players in the league. Even at 37, she's still putting up numbers that most players would kill for. She's long, she's athletic, she's tough, and most importantly, she's been through it all. Then there's Natasha Howard. She's a 3-time champion and former Defensive Player of the Year. If you watched the Fever last season, you know that defense was a problem. Indiana gave up the second most points per game in the league. Howard helps fix that immediately. She's a tenacious defender and physical presence who will make sure nobody gets easy baskets inside. And offensively, she, like wnba, is a dependable scorer who gives Caitlin more quality distribution options. Now, let's talk about Sophie Cunningham. Every team needs a player like Cunningham. Someone who can not only contribute offensively, she's a solid 36 to 37% three-point shooter, but brings grit, attitude, and energy every single night. She's tough, she's physical, she plays with an edge. When you have young stars like Clark and Boston, you need players who aren't afraid to have their backs. And Sophie has been so complimentary of Clark, saying she'll be the Sabrina Carpenter to her Taylor Swift. You just know that she'll have Caitlin's back. And if you're looking for more leadership, the Fever also brought in Sydney Colson. Colson is a 2-time champion with the Aces and a respected voice in the locker room. She may not put up a ton of points, but don't underestimate her impact. Every great team needs glue players, the ones who keep the energy up, hold teammates accountable, and make sure everyone is on the same page. That's what Colson brings. Now, let's talk about what the Fever didn't change, because that's just as important. One of the biggest moves they made was keeping Kelsey Mitchell. Mitchell has been Indiana's most consistent scorer for years. She averaged 19.2 points per game last season and was the one player defenses always had to respect outside of Clark. And then there's Aaliyah Boston. With more offensive threats surrounding her, defenses may be less inclined to double team her as often as they did last season. This team now has depth, versatility, and experience, all things they lacked last season. So what does all of this mean? It means the Fever are done being a rebuilding team. They're not just trying to make the playoffs, they're trying to win. This team is built to compete with anyone. They have size, they have shooting, they have defense, they have everything you need to make a deep playoff run. There's no doubt about it, this is the best team Caitlin Clark has ever played with. I mean, think about what she's had to work with up to this point. At Iowa, she carried a massive offensive load, facing double teams every night. And last season in the WNBA, more of the same. But this offseason changed everything. For the first time in her career, she's got a deep, experienced supporting cast around her, and she couldn't be happier. Clark hasn't been shy about expressing her excitement for the Fever's moves this offseason. They know what it takes to win, they know what it takes to get to the finals, they know what it takes to win championships. I think it's exactly what we needed in our locker room. In one way, the new additions take a massive load off her shoulders. For the first time in her life, Clark is going to play with elite shooters at multiple positions. With DeWanna Bonner, Sophie Cunningham, and Kelsey Mitchell, the Fever finally have players who can knock down open looks at a high rate. Clark thrives in space. She's the best passer in the WNBA, and now she has legit weapons to pass to. Her assist numbers could explode this season. But while the new supporting cast alleviates pressure for Caitlin in some ways, it also raises expectations dramatically. Last season, fans just wanted to see her make the playoffs. This year, that's not enough. She's been vocal about wanting to win big games, about wanting to prove people wrong. And let's not forget, the haters are still out there. There are people who still don't think Clark can win in the WNBA. There are still people who think she's all hype. There are still people who want to see her fail. Clark knows this, and she feeds off it. She's been under the spotlight her entire career. She's been counted out, doubted, questioned at every level, and every single time, she's responded. This season is her best chance yet to shut the critics up for good, because now, she has a real team around her. This is a team that can win. So, with all the excitement building for the 2025 season, fans saw the signing of Brianna Turner as a deflating moment, like having their birthday balloon popped. To put it nicely, reactions were mixed. To be brutally honest, fans are disgusted. On paper, the move seems like a positive. Turner is a former all-defensive team forward who Fever COO Amber Cox referred to as another fantastic veteran presence for us, both on and off the court. But what about all the tweets, Amber? While some fans saw light at the end of the tunnel, I'll get to that in a minute, the general consensus on social media was that Brianna had no business being part of the Fever. Fans expressed their anger largely due to comments she made during the Kennedy Carter-Caitlin Clark incident last season. And yeah, there were more, including one under-the-radar retweet that's actually worse than what I'm about to discuss. So during the fallout of the Carter-Clark incident, Turner posted on social media about the harassment that WNBA players, including herself and her teammates, were receiving. She mentioned being subjected to racial slurs and stated that some of her teammates experienced even worse treatment. Her comments weren't explicitly about Clark, but given the heightened tensions around the situation, many Clark supporters saw it as an indirect jab. And if there was any doubt about how Brianna felt about at least a segment of Caitlin Clark fans, a repost of an article talking about the two types of Caitlin Clark fans was eye-opening. The article puts forward that there are two types of Caitlin Clark fans: basketball fans and those who see Clark as a way to express their most deep-seated, hateful thoughts about the black and queer women in the WNBA. The article then jabs at her fans again, saying that Clark's campaign through the WNBA left a trail of harmed black women in her wake. And that's why signing Turner sends a mixed message. Why bring in a player who publicly, to put it mildly, doesn't think highly of your fans? Others are questioning why the team would take on Chicago's baggage, referencing the Sky's rough season last year and locker room tensions involving players like Kennedy Carter and Angel Reese. They fear that Turner could bring unnecessary drama to a Fever team that's already under intense scrutiny. On the other hand, you have those who say Turner never specifically targeted Clark in her tweets, and she was merely speaking out against racism and negativity in the league. They argue that she was caught up in the moment and reacting to what she believed was unfair treatment of WNBA players rather than attacking Clark or the Fever organization directly. To them, this is a nothing burger. But I think these people are missing that retweet I just mentioned. It pretty clearly singles out Caitlin Clark fans. It's still live. Go check it out. See for yourself. Here's the thing when starting to wrap your head around this move. Pretty much everyone agrees that the Fever's leadership has done an incredible job of surrounding Caitlin with the talent and leadership to win a championship. You have to think that any player they sign is, from this point onward, committed to winning a championship with Caitlin Clark, Stephanie White, and the Fever. You also have to think that any player who becomes a problem will be dealt with swiftly. The Fever brass clearly didn't feel Brianna Turner would be disruptive to team chemistry, and really, Turner wouldn't have signed with Indiana if there were any serious issues behind the scenes. In a press release, she said she was ecstatic to join the Fever organization and compete for a championship and couldn't wait to arrive in Indy and get to work. Now, that won't erase what she said online, and she's not going to change her views. In fact, within 24 hours of being signed, just hours before I started putting this video together, she was back on X defending defending her activism, saying that she wouldn't bend the knee. But at the end, she suggests she's going to lay off posting on X to protect her peace. So, while it would have been great to see a tweet like, "Wow, I'm so excited to join the Fever that attempts to make peace with fans she alienated multiple times," it's possible that the message from the Fever front office has been sent and received. No distractions, team first. But even then, she still had to get out one final tweet burst. Even if the Fever told her to lay off the tweets, she had to get the last word. So we know how the fans feel. But what about Caitlin? How is she reacting to all this? She hasn't said anything publicly, but I doubt she's worried about tweets with respect to on-court performance. This is a player who has always been about basketball first. She's had doubters and critics her entire career, and she's never let outside noise affect how she plays or how she leads. The reality is, Turner is a tough, defensive-minded veteran who could provide value for a team looking to win a championship. And you've got to think she chose to join the Fever to do just that. Win. So, is there reason to be optimistic? Potentially. You have to think, with all of Stephanie White's talk about addressing elephants in the room, Brianna's tweets about their fan base would have been addressed, and conduct expectations would have been agreed to. The best case scenario is that she's a great team fit, doesn't create distractions, doesn't divide the fan base, and helps the Fever win. Some of the most successful teams in sports history have had players with different personalities, different backgrounds, different worldviews, and even past tensions. But when the games start, none of that matters. The Fever are building a championship culture, and that means putting basketball first. Turner adds value as a defensive stopper, a physical presence, and a player who knows how to compete. As long as she is a great teammate who contributes on the court, she'll be welcome on the team, and eventually, trust can be earned with the fans. And she signed a one-year deal for just $85,000, which is unprotected. The unprotected part is important here. This means she knows she has to come in, prove herself, and be a culture fit, or else she can be cut without pay. And that is really the worst case scenario. She is locker room poison and swiftly cut from the team. There's a lot of leadership in the Fever locker room. Caitlin Clark, DeWanna Bonner, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Natasha Howard. This team is full of professionals. And then there's Stephanie White, who has made her expectations crystal clear.
Like for me as a human being, like if you're leaving your shopping cart out in the middle of the parking lot, I'm judging you. You're not gonna be on my team, right? Like, you're not gonna be on my team.
It's all about character and being a team player. If there's any hint of an issue with Brianna, it's going to be dealt with promptly. Now, this isn't ideal because fans and the players would lose trust in the Fever front office. For many, it would be a giant "I told you so" moment. But the Fever have to know this and feel confident this won't be the case. Otherwise, there's going to be so much egg on their faces over a depth move. It's not like they're signing Kennedy Carter, who can drop 20 points a game, which would make the Fever an absolute offensive beast. Speaking of being offensive, the best thing Brianna can do is bring a positive attitude, be a great teammate, and help the Fever win. And yeah, showing the fans some love would help as well. If she can do that and not be a distraction or alienate people, fans could warm up to her over time. Just like in the locker room, winning solves a lot of problems. I mean, what if she makes a championship winning block? That's the kind of redemption arc you hope for as a player and a fan. And at this point, it's what you have to hope for as a Fever fan. At the end of the day, the Fever brass believe her upside outweighs her baggage and can help deliver a championship. They've made quality moves all offseason to build a winner. Fans need to hope and perhaps trust that there's something they're missing, that things have been said, and that she won't disrupt a championship caliber team. If you're still here, drop a basketball emoji to let me know you made it to the end. Thank you for watching. See you next time.